What's going on, guys? Welcome back to this episode of Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin Senyek, and today I am joined by a very special guest. He's a co-host of SNY's The Mets Pod, a lead draft analyst for Bleacher Report, and host of the NFL Stock Exchange for PFF, Connor Rogers.
Griffin, thanks, man. What's going on?
Doing good. Happy to have you today, Connor. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, I do want to talk about the Mets. I want to talk about the NFL some. But today, I actually want to start off today's episode kind of talking about your personal career a little bit. So my first question for you is, when did you know that you wanted to work in sports media, and what were the steps you took that allowed you to get to where you are today?
Man, surprisingly, I would say either really early or really late in life. Like when I was a kid, when I was like 5, I was like, okay, like all I want to do the rest of my life has to do with sports. And then when you become a teenager and even in college, I just never thought it was realistic, to be honest with you. I think when you look at we lived in I'm 30 years old, right? So I was born in 1991. I grew up in a time where however many people were on Sports Center, which you could like count them on one hand, were the people that worked in sports. And then you had, you know, obviously the coverage of games, and this is still like this, but every color commentator is a former player. And then you have broadcasters. I never thought, I'd be like a traditional broadcaster. I didn't go to school as a broadcaster. I went to business school. So I kind of was fortunate that when I was in college, there was this new wave of media, mostly all working for free, where people were blogging about their interest in sports and then podcasting. And now the beast that is YouTube blew up. And then it turned into kind of what you and I are sitting here doing right now on Zoom, right? Like where you can, and other people care and watch. There's other mediums than TV, so that are profitable in a sense, that where you can do this for a living. So really late in life, my last 2 years of college is when I really got into writing and podcasting. It had nothing to do with what I was studying. I was in business school, and I just fortunately, when I got out of college and I was interviewing for jobs, I had an opportunity to come up as an entry-level research assistant at Bleacher Report strictly for the NFL. And I was like, man, I know everything about the NFL, or I think I do. I could do this job. Went through a pretty tough interview process, honestly, and got the job and started literally at the basement floor kind of job level and learned a lot while doing it behind the scenes, how to make shows, how to direct, how to do all these things. And it eventually transitioned to me being on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, definitely a interesting story here, and I like hearing everyone's different journey because everyone's perspective on things is so different and what happened to them. So that's awesome. My next question would be, what are one or two pieces of advice that you would say you've received over the years that has really helped you get to where you are today?
It's a good question. I think number one is to not be afraid to go for it, right? Like you could always go back to your backup plan, I think. And like for me, it was, like I said, I have my degree in business. I took the FDNY test. My dad was on the fire department in the Bronx for like 36 years, and those are all great avenues to work in. And I think for me, it was not that I could always go do those things. It's not in to say that, but it's that I had an opportunity to come up to work in sports in Manhattan for a growing company where I could learn and not be buried, right? Like I wasn't going to like a network where like I was one of a million and didn't matter. I was going to a place that was still small but growing. And I think that I finally took the mindset on, a lot of people are scared to do this and I get it, because it's like it stinks being like, either out of a job or down and out in money and things like that. Like I took a mindset on like, if this doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. Like I can go do other things. I can reset myself. I mean, when I got that job, I didn't have any money coming out of college. I commuted 3 hours each way. So I was commuting 6 hours a day. But if I burn out doing this, I can always go back to the other things. And I didn't burn out because I loved it. Like I loved waking up and going to the city every day and working in football. And I still love waking up every day and working in football. Now I'm very close to the city, obviously. Like it's a little different now. When I have to go in, it's 15 minutes, not 3 hours. But I think that was the number one thing, and that advice came from my mom, out of all people. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh, like you'll never make it working in sports," and this is 2014. So I think the mindset has changed a little bit as you see younger content creators like yourself, like having a lot of success doing podcasts from their own living room, doing YouTube channels, like Twitch streaming. Like there's these things are profitable. I think back then, it's funny you said back then because it's only 8 years ago, but it was like, man, like I don't know if you're gonna find a profitable career doing that. Like, how are you gonna like support yourself and then a family? And then it's like, well, you just try to prove people wrong. And I think that was really good advice. I'm trying to think of like some other, because it's interesting. I think the advice I always give people, I've been fortunate enough to speak to a couple college classes, is like you can start doing everything like you are whenever you want. Like I've done shows with high school kids hosting shows, and that blows my mind. But if you have a computer, they all have cameras on them right now. You can invest $50 in a microphone, and it's enough to get you by. And you could teach yourself on YouTube how to do basic audio and video editing. Like, you can build your portfolio from your own bedroom right now. And I think that's amazing, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time to be about to go to college, and yeah, I mean, I've been, like you've kind of said, it's been awesome being able to
How
kind
old
of
are
get
you?
ahead. And I'm only 17.
Holy crap. See? This is a perfect example. Like,
Yeah,
you're going to college and you're already doing podcasts. That's incredible.
yeah. No, it's been a awesome experience. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that those pieces of advice are awesome. I do want to pivot though, and talk about the New York Mets, my favorite baseball team. I know it's also your favorite team. I mean, obviously, it's been a great year for the Mets. They're coming off a big win last night. When we're filming this, they just beat the Marlins 10-0. Currently 3.5 games over the Atlanta Braves in the NL East. My main question for you right now, I mean, what has surprised you the most about this Mets team this year?
How the guys in the pitching staff have performed while Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom have not been able to play. I think that if you told me, right, one of Taijuan Walker, Carlos Carrasco, Tyler McGill at the time, David Peterson, like Trevor Williams, one of those guys is going to overperform expectations and surprise, I would have said, you know what? You're probably right. The chances are one of them will have a good first half. If you told me that basically all of them have overachieved, I would be like, no way. Like, I knew I've always been a fan of Carrasco, but you had to wonder, is it just has he hit that wall? And he's had his struggles this year, but he's also had some really good starts. Taijuan Walker has pitched all-star caliber again in the first half, which is incredible. Peterson he's kept them in games. Trevor Williams has kept them in games. It's all you can ask for from sixth starters, those kinds of guys. So I think that I knew this team was going to get on base, right? When you have Brandon Nimmo, Mark Canha, Starling Marte, Jeff McNeil, you're going to get on base. I knew Pete Alonso was going to hit home runs. I knew Francisco Lindor was going to drive in runs and play a good shortstop. I knew that betting on J.D. Davis and Dom Smith and at one time Robinson Cano to DH is probably going to be a strategy that changes by the time you get to the trade deadline. But I did not think the back half of the rotation and the guys that started out in Syracuse or wherever it may be in the bullpen would step up like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been shocking. It's been a very successful year, and you just saw Scherzer come back. DeGrom seems to be on the mend. So, 21 games over 500. I mean, if you look on Mets Twitter, it might seem like they're in last place or the sky is falling, but it's been a really
Always.
it's been a really a good season thus far. You did kind of mention it when you were talking about the DH spot. The trade deadline is coming up. That's definitely a spot of need for the Mets. They've already been linked to guys like Trey Mancini, Nelson Cruz. I mean, what do you think are the main needs for the Mets going into the trade deadline, and who in particular would you like to see them look to trade for?
They need a bat. They need a power bat. And that's honestly cost effective at the deadline every year. Like, you can find that. Like, look at the Braves getting Duvall and Rosario and Soler. Like, you can get a power bat. Now, they need relief help. You can get relief help every deadline because that is the number one thing that teams out of contention sell is relievers, especially on expiring contracts. So, fortunately, the two things the Mets need are very attainable, like that, and very cost effective. You don't need to trade Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty. Like, you don't need to do these things to get these guys. That's not what you're really taking on, the money and maybe a third or fourth tier prospect for things like that. So they're going to get those things. I will sit here and confidently say they are going to get those things. Now, is there a surprise at play? Like, do they like the flexibility of a guy like Wilson Contreras, that he is offensively would be a great DH, but he can catch for you? And we know that McCann, even though he's had a nice little couple days here, McCann and Nito are very limited offensively. They're very limited offensively. And now Contreras is going to cost more than what I previously said about DH and relief help. But do you like the flexibility of him to be able to DH when he's not catching? I don't know. Are they going to pay that kind of price? That's something that remains to be seen. I think that there was a time where we looked at things and go, man, do they have to go get Frankie Montas or Castillo from the Reds because they need a frontline starter? I don't think we live in that world anymore. You have DeGrom on a rehab assignment. Fingers crossed he can actually stay healthy. But even if he doesn't, you have Scherzer, you have Taijuan Walker, you have Bassett, you have Carrasco. Like, maybe you're looking at a fourth or fifth starter to add into the fold with Peterson and Trevor Williams because you like Williams as a long reliever, not a spot starter, so you get a spot starter. So that's what I think the Mets are at, and that's a good problem to be facing, that you're not like, hey, we need a shortstop, we need a center fielder. They don't need those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely say they're in a good spot. The one thing that's very interesting, I think, about this trade deadline is, and I mean, we've seen people talk about it, is due to the expanded playoffs, there's less sellers, which means,
yes,
the market is definitely a lot thinner, which may, end up resulting in some of these players who wouldn't require, as much of a price in past years, end up requiring a good amount. I mean, last year we saw all these players. We saw the Scherzers, the Trey Turners, the Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, all those guys.
Yeah,
and this year, I mean,
it was nuts.
It was crazy. And then this year, it's like, I mean, I guess you have Luis Castillo might be the best guy that gets dealt, but offensively, I mean, you've got Josh Bell, maybe CJ Cron gets dealt. I mean, it's definitely very limited, which, I mean, it's good the Mets don't need a lot this year because they would probably be in trouble otherwise.
You know what the wild card to me in all of this is? To me, it's the San Francisco Giants, because, and I don't think they'll ever convince themselves to be, they are 11 and a half games back as we record this podcast. They are a game over 500. They are a team that when they get hot, nothing can stop them. But man, if they kind of spiral here these next 4 weeks before the deadline, they got the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Brewers, and then 4 with the Dodgers. Like, that's not the easiest run. Are they a team that quietly goes into sell mode? They have some good relief options. They have a guy like Jock Peterson that's just been dynamite. That's the one to me that can flip the deadline upside down. But I'm not convinced they'll ever really convince themselves that it's time to sell.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching MLB Central this morning on MLB Network, and they brought the same thing up: the Giants and also the Angels as another team that to potentially watch, with potentially guys like Syndergaard, Loop, Tepera, which, I mean, those are teams that you have to watch. But man, I mean, and they were bringing up trading like guys like Trout and Ohtani, which obviously won't happen this year. But as you look to the future, I mean, next year could be a crazy year if the Angels can't find success. But
you're right. Like, at some point, you really need to decide: is it time to blow it up, or do we keep doing this thing where we always think this is the year?
Yeah,
it's not a good place. Nobody wants to be in that place.
No, and I mean, imagining what Shohei Ohtani could get on the trade market is just pure. That would be pure insanity if he ended up getting dealt.
It'd be crazy.
All right. Well, I think that will do it for the Mets today. I do want to pivot, though, for the last little bit of time we have, to the NFL. I mean, this offseason has just been crazy. We're, getting closer and closer to preseason at this point, about a month away or so. But I want to ask you about, it seems, I guess the most recent news in the NFL, really, that was the Baker Mayfield trade. Obviously, he was traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 4th-round pick in, I believe, 2024.
Yep.
Carolina is a very interesting team. They've got all these quarterbacks. Do you believe that with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, Carolina can compete?
I do. I think they can compete. I think this makes them significantly better. I think Baker Mayfield, when healthy, which is a huge caveat, is a significantly better player than Sam Darnold or Matt Corral right now. I think that's kind of funny. Like, Corral has a similar cadence and aesthetic to Baker, which is going to be funny watching them throw together in camp. I think that Baker is a guy that, when he's in the right offense and needs to be a distributor to get his playmakers the ball, can do it. So when you have those kinds of playmakers that are so good after the catch in the Carolina offense, they solve their biggest need at left tackle, getting Ike Ekwonu. I think, it's tough, right? Like, the Bucks are going to be really good. The Bucks are going to be really good. The Saints are going to be good. Like, they're not going away anywhere. The Falcons are going to be terrible. So, to me, with Carolina is, can you at least split with the Saints and keep yourself, relevant in that wild card race? And I think if Baker's shoulder is right, massive difference, right? If it's not,
Yeah.
you're like, oh boy, like this. We saw what happened last year. We saw it.
Yeah.
But if he's healthy, they're a team that they have a lot of young ascending players on defense that the general, national coverage does not pay attention to. But guys like me I do the draft all year, and then I watch guys their first year or two in the NFL to see where it goes. They are now poised for a pretty good breakout.
Yeah, I think Carolina is a very interesting team. I mean, I think that they'll be up there. I mean, they always seem to kind of be in the 7-8 win range. And I mean, I probably still have them missing the playoffs, to be honest. I don't know. I feel like they're one of the teams that just they're kind of stuck in this loop of just like mediocrity since that Super Bowl. And it seems like they just can't kind of get out of it. And especially in this day and age, I mean, on our weekly episodes, when we talk about the NFL on this podcast, I mean, the level of quarterbacking in the NFL right now is just insanity. And you look at a guy like Baker, and I've talked about, why the Browns made the move with Deshaun, even with all the allegations and all that stuff. Deshaun, at least if he's playing, which obviously is a huge if, he can compete with these guys. But a guy like Baker, I just don't think at this level and this day and age in the NFL can compete and seriously lead a team to a Super Bowl at this point. So we'll see.
It's tough. Like, man, when you look at it, like the only model those teams can sell themselves on is what the Niners have done. And that's a lot to ask when you look at that Niners roster and the coaching that they've had, that they lost a lot of recently. So it's you're right. It's either have a superstar quarterback or go the Niners model. Neither are easy to attain.
Yeah, and you look at the Niners; they've got a lot of superstars there with Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel. I mean, they've George Kittle. It's
best run game schematically that we've seen.
Yeah, Trent Williams. I mean,
years.
Yeah. They are. I don't think Carolina's quite there, but if they're going for that, we'll see how it turns out, I guess. I want to pivot to a team that I know you are a supporter of, the New York Jets. They had a good offseason. I mean, the draft went very well for them. As good as you could get. I mean, they landed 4, top tier first round talent players. They made some good signings too. I mean, what are your expectations for the Jets going into the season?
It's funny. I was just telling somebody that there's a good 7 wins and a bad 7 wins. And I think the Jets are finally trending where they should find the good 7 wins, where it's Zach Wilson's not going to leap. He's going to step forward. And that's okay. Like that, he doesn't need to throw 35 touchdowns and like be a superstar yet. So for that, I think it's that you get the small step forward from Zach Wilson, maybe the Jimmy G 2021, the 20 touchdowns, the 10 to 12 picks, run-heavy offense with a good offensive line, specifically at guard. But for the Jets, tough schedule. A lot of young players that are still growing, right? You have the 2021 class that it should take a nice leap forward this year. Elijah Moore, Elijah Vera-Tucker was very good last year. Michael Carter. 2022, when you look at it, how ready is Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall? The answer to me is all 3 of those guys are going to be starters. Jermaine Johnson's probably going to play around 50% of the snaps, help your run defense on the edge, give you some effort sacks early on. So the Jets are on a different timeline than a lot of the other teams in the AFC, right? Like, and it's okay. Like, the Bengals are in Super Bowl now, obviously, because they made it last year. They're in a Super Bowl window. Chiefs are always going to be with Mahomes. Bills are always going to be with Josh Allen. The Browns, the Watson situation makes them a total variable. The Ravens are healthy. I think they're going to win the North. And then you have the Colts, who are in win now with Matt Ryan. The rest of that division is not very good. I think Tennessee takes a step back, but that's a lot of like Super Bowl or bust kind of teams. That the Jets are not Super Bowl or bust. So good 7 wins, not a bad 7 wins. Not the 7 wins where it's like, we're old, we're losing all these guys to free agency, we have no picks, we have no money. Like, it's a good 7 wins where it's like quarterback is going the right way, young play callers going the right way, this core is under contract for at least another 2 to 3 years, coaching staff is hopefully getting better, they need to improve. So that's where I think the Jets realistically are right now. I don't think they're as bad as a lot of people thinking they'll win 4 games again. I don't think they're as good as a lot of people thinking they're a sneaky playoff team.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, they're doing it the right way. At least they've done a good job with this rebuild. I am curious though, with Zach Wilson. I mean, obviously, you know, number 2 overall pick. I mean, the fate of this rebuild essentially is in
No
his
doubt.
hands.
No doubt.
Um, looking at the draft though last year, where did you're obviously big with the draft. What did you think the Jets should have done? Do you think Zach Wilson was the right pick at that spot?
I evaluated him as the second best quarterback, and I thought it was close. I had him, Lawrence, Lance, and Fields all in the top 5 overall in the draft, and I
Mhm.
never have a lot of quarterbacks in the first round like that. So it was really what you want to do on offense, right? Like there was things Justin Fields was better at. Fields was obviously extremely accurate at all 3 levels, a big-bodied thrower, a big-bodied runner, but I thought Wilson mechanically with his release point and twitchiness in the pocket could be better in those ways where that fits their San Francisco like offense. So I had no problem with the pick. I think when it comes down to it, it's a fact of you needed to be ready for a guy coming out of BYU to get the time that he needs. Like throwing him into the fire is an interesting choice, but they didn't really have much of it. Like they were always going to do that. While
Yeah.
you see Trey Lance sit, Justin Fields sat and then got hurt. Like Mac Jones won the job in camp over Cam Newton, which at this point of Cam's career, that's not like overly insane, but he still won the job. So I think with Wilson, you signed up knowing you're going to go through a lot of really tough hurdles. And the first half of his year was awful. The second half of the year, he was much better. Now he needs to carry that momentum into this year. But I'm not one of those people because of his slow start that goes, oh man, like that was the wrong pick. Trevor Lawrence had a really rough year.
Yeah.
Justin Fields had a rough year. Trey Lance couldn't win that job. Like that, you look at it like that. These guys are much better players than what they showed as rookies. And I think we'll see that this year.
Yeah, I mean, compared to this year, that quarterback class definitely was expected to be one of the best in recent years, and it's definitely. I mean, it's only been 1 year, obviously, but obviously,
But it was a
Mac
tough year.
Jones. It
Yeah, it was a
was. It
tough
was a
year.
very tough year. I mean, outside of Mac Jones, really, none of them did anything special. The last question I have for you today. I mean, looking at this offseason as a whole in the NFL, it's been pure insanity. You talk to anyone, it's the craziest offseason they've ever covered. I mean, in your opinion, what do you think was the most shocking move of the offseason?
The Watson trade. I think that not the trade itself, but the pursuit of him from what 4 teams we
For
know of.
teams, yeah.
Okay, so that's surprising to me. The 250 guaranteed, like million guaranteed, like I don't know. I don't want to get too down into this road because there's a lot of
Yeah.
ongoing legal things, NFL
Yeah.
investigation. It's really messy. I am on the side that the Browns are absolutely insane for making that deal, but that to me was the most like so shocking to have that kind of stuff pending and not only be acquired for a massive return, but the money given in that deal is unprecedented. Like, there was nothing close where everybody else in the league is looking at the Browns and going, "Are you kidding me?" Like, if you're the Baltimore Ravens right now and you have to pay Lamar Jackson, who has won an MVP, is an excellent character guy, supreme off the field, all-world work ethic, no problems to worry about him, nothing. You're looking at that and going, "We love Lamar." Now we have to top that contract. It's set a bar that is it's like sitting on planet Earth and looking at Mars. Like it's so out there that move to me was just I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And nothing surprises me with superstar quarterbacks, and that surprised me.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole process was crazy. I talked with Ian Rappaport on here, and he was I asked him about the whole process, and he was he said the Browns were out that day that it was reported. I mean the
Me
Browns were
too.
told like Deshaun Watson, he's not going to be there, and then literally the next day he thought about it. He wanted the chance to compete. Obviously the money came later, but then I mean it was kind of just the whole process was just pure insanity. And you bring up a good point with Lamar. I mean it's paid off him not signing an extension yet, because now I mean the quarterback market is just the whole NFL. I mean the wide receiver market blew up this offseason, but the quarterback market obviously is at a different level. So Lamar Jackson will cash in whenever he gets his next contract.
Yeah, he's going to do pretty well. I think that Ravens team is going to be really good this year because they're healthy. They had a good draft. You don't have to worry about him being motivated, whether contract year or not, but that puts a little extra sweet sauce on it. So that man, I think it's obviously huge for him. Now Lamar, I think also representing himself I think it's a little different. I don't think that contract will be matched, which you always say the next guy gets more. I don't think that'll be matched, but it does help him get more.
Yeah, definitely. It will be very interesting to see what that deal is when the time comes. But with that, that will do it for this week's episode of Outside the Arena. Thank you so much for joining me today, Connor. I'll link all of your socials and all of that below in the description. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate the support greatly. And we'll see you all in the next episode of Outside the Arena.